a big issue for them for a long time. But
okay, it's time. Call the Monday, March 21st, 2022 Board of Trustees regular meeting to order. Could we please have the roll call, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor Angelo,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Present.
Trustee Rogan,
Present.
Trustee Lowell,
Present.
Trustee Caravas,
Present.
Trustee Miller. It didn't come through, Trustee Miller.
Present.
Perfect, thank you. And Trustee Wah.
Present.
Please all rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Just
We take a reflective moment of silence at this time. Let's keep in mind the families of the victims of the King Soopers shooting. It was a year anniversary of that horrific act. For neighbors and friends who were victims of the Marshall Fire, the brave and courageous people of the Ukraine, and now the very close to 1 million victims and their families of COVID. Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any items that any trustees wish to remove from the agenda?
Mayor,
Mayor Pro Tem?
I have a question. We discussed by telephone earlier today, possibly requesting the board to make a modification in the town media policy that was shown in the packet. Is that something that you're still interested in pursuing, that and bringing up?
We talked about that this afternoon with Counselor. And I think that we can do that as a future agenda item, most likely be taken up by the new Board of Trustees. But there was an agenda request for this meeting on being able to modify that policy for a specific event.
Brandon, you have,
yeah, I can clarify. So as I understand it, there's two things kind of potentially before the board concerned to the marquee policy. One being the specific request that's before the board right now concerning an individual, and one, probably was to be a future discussion concerning the marquee policy in general. I don't think the policy change has been noticed at all, and it was passed by resolution. So in order to change the policy, we need a future agenda item of some kind, considering a resolution to change that. However, the request, the current request, could be considered by the board tonight, via direction. And as I posed to the mayor, that can be a general business item. It's been already noticed as a trustee item, I think, as a trustee discussion item. It's up to the board how it wants to handle that.
that was the purpose of my question. If we are going to consider that request, then I was going to move to move that on the agenda to general business, because I don't think the board should be voting on items that are listed under trustee reports. I think that belongs under general business. So,
And I have no objection to that.
okay, then I would move to modify the agenda that was reflected in the packet, to move the item relating to the use of the marquee and the media policy to, I don't think it'll take long to basically be the first item taken up under general business rather than being taken up under trustee reports. That's my motion to modify the agenda.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second as described by the Mayor Pro Tem. Are there any other comments? If not, I'll call for the vote.
The clerk was kicked off of Zoom tonight, so I'll take that roll call for her.
Thank you.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Miller.
Yay.
Thank you.
The motion carries unanimously. Are there any other requests to amend the agenda? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote on the amended agenda.
Okay, Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Miller. Can you give us a thumbs up, Trustee Miller?
Sorry, I'm having connectivity issues too. Yay.
Okay,
Thank you.
motion passes unanimously. The agenda is approved as amended. We'll need a motion to close as the Board of Trustees and open as a Board of Ethics.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second as stated. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Oh, Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Miller.
I'm sorry. Everybody was frozen for a minute.
This is to move into to close as the Board of Trustees and open as the Board of Ethics.
Oh, yay.
Thank you.
The motion is approved. We are now in session as the Board of Ethics. Could we please have a staff report? Counselor?
Sorry, I'll go over the procedure for the board
Okay.
concerning this this complaint. So if you look at section 7C1 of the board's ethics code, the Board of Ethics shall accept from any person a verified complaint in writing, which we have received from Drew Weaver in this case concerning Trustee Miller. At this stage in the process, the board is required to consider whether it shall investigate the complaint or whether it shall dismiss it. And so what the board is considering right now is whether sufficient facts exist in the written complaint received by the board, included in the packet, to warrant an investigation, which could either be by myself or, probably an independent investigator if it were to move forward. And so that's what we're here for tonight. The board has received in its packet the verified complaint. Staff makes no comments on whether or not it deserves to be investigated. If you have any questions concerning the complaint, we can do our best to answer those. However, I think the complaint speaks for itself.
Are there any additional staff presentations?
Only as you already heard, that we did receive a written formal complaint from a Mr. Drew Weaver regarding Trustee Miller and the use of her Zoom account, similar to what you see right now, that her name as Trustee Miller showed up during a deposition hearing, and Mr. Weaver is indicating that he feels that she was using her title of trustee to try to influence the process. And we have one written formal complaint, and then he used an exhibit from a previous complaint involving Trustee Miller also using her title in that way, not in the Zoom account, but during a hearing of some sort. And trying to think what else he did. And that's really the premise of his complaint. And you have all of the same documentation that the clerk and I received.
Thank you. Trustee Miller, you can take an opportunity of rebuttal at this time, if you wish.
Yeah, so this is obviously was an ongoing litigation between my child's father and the complaint, the one that the complaint was from. I lent my computer to my child's father to use for the deposition because his computer did not have a camera attached to it. And because he does not have any form of technology savvy at all. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. He didn't know how to change the name in the Zoom in the box. So I was not obviously present for those depositions. I had no, this has already been, I'm sorry for the resource and time use of this whole thing. This has already been heard once. This is just an ongoing, I think, issue with him. The lawsuit is no longer going on. It's been thrown out. He is, I don't know where he thinks this is going to get him doing this, but the basis is of his claim is not even functional, because I think I sent into Administrator Simonson and Mayor Angelo, and I think Brandon, the transcripts of the actual deposition, which Mr. Weaver has as well, showing that I was not present for the actual deposition. Obviously, they're not going to have a deposition with somebody there that they don't know who it is. That's not how they operate in depositions such as that. So there you go. I don't have anything else to say.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion by any of the Board of Ethics members. Mayor Pro Tem,
I move that we determine this complaint does not warrant further investigation or any process. That's my motion.
do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second as stated by the Mayor Pro Tem. Now is our opportunity for discussion. Are there any discussions, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, this complaint basically repeats a complaint that was filed, I can't even remember how long ago. And all it adds that I could see is that the name Trustee Miller appeared on a Zoom deposition. Well, I don't even know how to put my own title on it. It says Mayor Pro Tem Browning under my picture, and I don't do that. So there's no evidence that Trustee Miller took any role in the deposition or was responsible for her name and title appearing on that. And if that's all that's the basis of this complaint, there's no need for an investigation. It's frivolous and there's no need to go forward.
Are there any additional comments? If there are none, I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Miller.
Trustee Miller.
Trustee Miller, can you hear us?
I can now. I'm sorry. What,
And your vote?
am I supposed to vote?
You are.
You can, or you can abstain if you wish.
I'll just abstain.
Okay.
Thank you.
The Board of Ethics has ruled a 6-0 with one abstention that this complaint does not warrant investigation. I'll entertain a motion to close the Board of Ethics.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Miller.
Okay,
Board of Ethics meeting has been concluded. I'll entertain a motion to open as the Board of Trustees.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to open as the Board of Trustees. Without further discussion, I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Miller.
okay.
Board of Trustees. Regular meeting is now back in order. Our next agenda item is audience business. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the Board of Trustees on any matter that they wish at this time. Please state your name and address for the record. Always help me out, Madam Clerk.
Sir, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Okay. I'm always a little bit concerned when we are in session at a time that is sooner than our normal time. So there may be somebody that wishes to speak under audience business later in this meeting, and we'll make a determination at that time whether they be allowed to speak or not. Next is Sergeant Christ, Boulder County Sheriff's Office report.
I don't believe he is on the call yet either, so you may want to go to trustees.
Okay. Trustee reports. Trustee Rogan.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. The HPC did not have a quorum this month, so we're looking at next month. Be on the lookout, though, for a very cool walking tour to be distributed very soon. The EVC met and we had a very robust conversation about how Planet Bluegrass can further enrich the town and work with local businesses for everybody's benefit. And learn that the Sandstone concerts are moving to Wednesday evenings to benefit our businesses that don't get a lot of traffic on Wednesdays. I think that's a done deal, and I'm sure Administrator Simonson can tell me if that's not the case. And then finally, Mayor mentioned the anniversary of the King Super shooting, which is tomorrow. And I think we all know that we've all lived through a lot of trauma these past couple of years, and that anniversaries of traumatic events can bring up complicated emotions. And so I just want to encourage everybody here and listening to be kind to themselves and to be extra kind to each other these next few days. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Trustee Rogan. Trustee Lowell?
Thanks, Mayor. Not much to report. We had a CMAX meeting last Wednesday. We had a full complement of members there. I floated some ideas to CMAX about how they might contribute environmentally to the community, one of which was possible stocking of the McConnell ponds if Director Cosgrove determines that they're ready to receive fish. They were receptive to that. The other thing was at the McConnell ponds, we talked about possible installation of some bat houses, maybe a couple, one over the river, one over the pond. They were excited about that too, because apparently they do the same thing at their pond down on the CMAX property. And in other news, all the hard copy annual reports that I placed at the library are gone. So I reprinted, with the help of Marissa, another 25, and they're down there ready for pickup for anybody who chooses to want one. That's all I have.
Thank you. I know Trustee Miller is very excited about the bat houses idea. Trustee Caravas.
Okay, the UEB met last Wednesday. I was at different appointments. I could not make it, so Mark Browning subbed for me. The members met and discussed and formulating how the RFP for the solar farm and the battery is going to go, the technology issues they've got to deal with, and the delivery options for that project. They also went ahead and discussed how about the assignment of the watershed for Spear Hound, which we will hear about later in our agenda under general business. And that is it for now.
Mayor, Trustee Wong, excuse me.
Good evening, everyone. The Planning and Community Development Commission met for a workshop earlier this week. Performed a development update on current development projects, as well as provided an update on the comprehensive plan, and then spent considerable time talking about the wildfire task force. And I guess there were some questions about kind of what this task force's scope would be. So, I think there's still a little bit, there's a lot to do in terms of the wildfire task force in terms of specific projects. And I think they were looking for a little bit of guidance or a little bit of direction and trying to understand exactly, is this task force supposed to take care of everything or just guide the overall approach, which was my feeling from the board meeting that this task force would do. Very good discussion, and then also reviewed exactly the discussions that we had at the workshop with the BOT and the PCDC last week. So good meeting, good discussion, and that's really all I have.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Miller.
Dolores asked me to give a report, a lengthy report, correct? Is that what you want me to do? Give a in-depth
Not
report?
about lengthy, but an update report on, I think, the grants, the grant.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
It was included in my admin report too, if that's helpful.
Oh, okay. So, let's see here. The Goodwill grants have been decided, and we had 13,500 budgeted. We gave 5,000 to Leaf, which was the top amount for any given nonprofit. $42.50 for the food forest and $42.50 for the library. Both of those, all of them ask for more than what we could give them. LCF also asked for some that we decided not to because it was a project. It was not project based, which is specifically what the grants, the grant is for, as a project. So we made that clear for next year on that. So do you want me to give a rundown on the 2021? What we accomplished? Is that kind of what you want me to do, or just? I don't know. I got an email from Dolores earlier. So we have RTD money or RTD funds, $40,000. We're getting VIA is applied for the potentially running buses like the RTD did, because we are trying to get buses back here. So RTD is trying to figure out how to do that. So it's not the full buses, but smaller, shuttles type thing. So it's more efficient for them. They put so VIA is something that runs right now. They do it a couple of times a week, one in town and one day from here to Longmont and here to Boulder. So they're doing that. We have the fire department. We're working with them still to get the list going, so we can get all the seniors on the our 911 signed up for that. Let's see, Get Help Guide, we printed that just recently. That's on all the places. And we did lose Jennifer Schwartz, so we need another couple of people still on the commission. Let's see. And then housing, we're trying to figure out how we want to move forward with the Summit housing. If we're supposed to do something with getting that word out when Summit's built, how they're going to do all that with the priority. So we need to talk about that a little bit, I think. And we are still working on getting some education out there regarding safe housing for everyone. So it's work in progress. That's all I've got.
Thank you. I understand it was a rather lengthy report and there was a lot of information. If any board members would appreciate additional information, I don't want to take it up now under trustee reports, but any questions about the appropriations, where they went, how much, please forward those to Administrator Simonson. And if we need to discuss those further, we can at a future meeting. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, the Parks and Recreation Commission met last Monday. And I'll just mention briefly three things they talked about. They plan to have this summer, I think the date is August the 8th, a dark sky night, lights out night, like they had last year. I think they'll be applying for an event permit for Bone Park for that. I think, as I mentioned last meeting, the PRC and the library are kind of jointly going to sponsor or request board approval for the creation of a location for what they call a story walk. And I think the PRC and perhaps the library people as well are going to be asking for a brief time for a brief presentation to the board under the boards and commissions part of the agenda soon. And I don't know if it'll be this board or the next board, but I think for those that are working on future agendas, I think you'll be getting a request from the PRC and perhaps the library as well to do a short presentation of what that story walk would entail. And then finally, there was an extended discussion about the funding, preliminary funding direction that was given by this board at our last meeting, which involved substantial use of the parks and the conservation trust fund monies. There were concerns expressed about how that much use of the parks fund would affect obviously future park projects, including some year phase 3 of Bone Park, which would include an additional tennis and pickleball court, and they hope at some point lighted ball fields. And while the Parks Commission was concerned about obviously the fund balance going down, they also recognized that the 3 projects to which parks funding would be spent that we talked about all involve parks projects to some extent, and involve parks projects that the Parks Commission had previously identified as important priorities. So in the end, they decided not to submit a formal statement to the board as to specific funding priorities. So I'll just say that they are aware of what the board discussed, and they're following it closely. And like I said, they don't have a specific position to take at this point. Then, as Trustee Caravas mentioned, due to his absence, I sat in as, I guess, pinch hit liaison, substitute liaison, something like that for the UEB at their meeting last Wednesday. And that was the first time that a board member could actually discuss with the UEB the utilities aspects of the Planet Bluegrass proposal, because until our last board meeting, that had been a quasi judicial matter. And Trustee Caravas had to recuse himself, as we all did, with our commissioners discussing that. So what happened at last Wednesday's meeting was I basically outlined for the UEB what the board had done, what we had decided at our last meeting, and the fact that the utilities aspects of that are still require further attention. If there was a subcommittee appointed, and so the UEB is going to have a meeting. I'll miss the days. The last Wednesday in March, whenever that is, to specifically talk about the utilities aspects of the Planet Bluegrass proposal, because those are sufficiently complicated that they didn't feel like they had enough time to take that up as a full discussion at the prior meeting. So when the UEB meets next, the last Wednesday in March, they will discuss that and may or may not make a recommendation to the board, but they've been briefed as to where things stand, and they're going to be meeting about it and discussing it. That's my report.
Thank you, sir. I think that's the 30th of March, if I'm looking at the calendar correctly.
I believe that's correct. Their normal next meeting would not have been until the first Wednesday in April, but that would have been after the Board of Trustees meeting, where we're going to take that up. So they're going to meet. They're basically going to kind of do like a special meeting beforehand. That's
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. My report includes, well, first of all, in a tradition that Trustee Rogan started, I'm so thankful for the staff. I come down almost every day, signing stuff and talking, and talking strategy, not micromanaging, but just having great conversations. And it's been two-way street in regard to both raising morale and having my morale raised as well. And it is wonderful to try to help each other out and be kind to one another. It certainly beats the alternative. In regard to my official reports, the LAHC met. We discussed mural projects and additional possibilities. One being the Eastern Hotel wall, which has been offered already. The Cemex tube wrap, which would be in the manner of Crystal. No objections from Cemex so far. Also the small water tank on Apple Valley. So if we do end up selling it, maybe we could get permission from the new owner to allow us to still paint a mural on it. There was further discussion on the town hall mural. And there were fundraising ideas, which will be at both the Riverbend Art Show and the Indian Sculpture Dedication. And in addition to that, at the Death of Pugilist musical next weekend. Then I was honored to be invited to the community mayor's meeting at the St. Vrain Valley School District. It was wonderful because it was a tour of the Innovation Center as well, which is just a phenomenal facility. And some of the interesting facts that I got from the people representing the St. Vrain Valley School District is that there haven't been any teacher losses, that they offer programs starting in high school to mentor students to become teachers. They have the best bond rating in Colorado. They raised graduation rates to 91.6%, and in an individual category, raised the Hispanic graduation rate from 55% to 86%. Their dropout rate is now 0.6. They offer 2-year associate degrees, college courses at no cost. They feed any student who needs to be fed because it's very difficult to learn while you're hungry. We talked about the education consequences of COVID. They assured me, since I brought it up, in addition to the mayor of Longmont, that it's an ongoing situation. The impacts were for 2 years. They aren't going to be alleviated in a short time. Let's see. We talked about mental health. And we also talked about robotics, which is offered at the Innovation Center. And I just want to mention a shout out to our middle schoolers from Longmont who finished second in the state and are headed to the national competition in robotics. Congratulations. On the SFC side, we talked about updating the building code to perhaps make it more environmentally sustainable. They would like to meet with the new members of the Board of Trustees. They understand that it needs to be noticed. It's at an individual's house, at Keen's house, and I think it's scheduled for the 28th, but I'm not absolutely positive about that, but I'm sure we can get that information. Let's see. They need probably a permanent member to the CC4CA meetings. They mentioned mentioning on a continuing basis the mean incentives that are offered to people in town. They spoke about the Ithaca program, which is a program that was implemented in Ithaca, New York, in regard to sustainability, which I thought was a tremendous program as well. With that, if there are no objections, I'd now like to read a proclamation. Are there any? Thank you. Town of Lyons, Colorado. A proclamation by the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lyons, Colorado. If I can get through this without crying, it'll be a miracle. Standing in solidarity with the sovereign nation of Ukraine and supporting the rights of all citizens. Whereas Lyons, Colorado stands in unwavering solidarity with the people of the sovereign nation of Ukraine as they defend themselves against Russia's unprovoked invasion and war against their democracy and sovereign right to exist as an independent nation. And whereas Russia continues to wage a brutal, unprovoked war against Ukraine, leading to the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II, and whereas the town of Lyons desires to demonstrate its support of our allies, and whereas in these moments of crisis, the leadership demonstrated by President Zelensky's members of the Ukrainian armed forces and the citizens of Ukraine are a beacon of resolve and commitment to democratic principles and values. And whereas the town of Lyons stands with other countries, private corporations, religious leaders, states, and cities from around the world in condemning this horrific act of aggression by Russia and demands the immediate cessation of all hostilities. And whereas the public servants at the local level in Ukraine should be recognized as they continue to practice servant leadership under the most dangerous of conditions to provide essential municipal services. Now, therefore, the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lyons hereby proclaims Section 1, the Town of Lyons condemns the acts of Russian aggression. Section 2, the Town of Lyons supports the government and people of the sovereign nation of Ukraine. Section 3, the Town of Lyons urges the Lyons community to contribute resources to aid the people of Ukraine, given under my hand and the seal of the Town of Lyons this 21st day of March, 2022. Nicholas Angelo, Mayor. Is Sergeant Christ on the line yet?
He is, sir.
Sergeant Chris, could we please have your report, sir?
Yes, sir. Sorry if I was late this evening to the meeting.
We were early,
my
sir. We were early. You weren't late.
Okay.
We were early.
I was wondering. All right. Well, first off, I'm going to start off by thank you for that proclamation. That was absolutely awesome, Mayor. I appreciate that, as I know a lot of people do. So I have just a few things to note in my report tonight. So I'm going to start off with Boulder County Sheriff's Office staffing. As I reported, through COVID and stuff like that, we were kind of in a pretty heavy downswing. Staffing levels are coming up. We are hiring more and retaining more than we're seeing in early retirement. So that is a breath of fresh air. We still have a little ways to go, but we are on the uphill swing. With that uphill swing comes that extra desire for folks to come up and do some extra work, particularly in the town of Lyons and particularly in the traffic safety department. So we have seen an uptick in our traffic enforcement through town, which I greatly appreciate. And then stemming off of that, this might just be a little bit of a delayed thank you and shout out, but the sheriff's office last year presented the town with a new style of tickets that we're going to be writing. They're all going electronic, kind of getting in with the modern world. Kind of hard for this old dog to get a grip on some of this modern technology, but the electronic ticket writing system, it is very beneficial to everybody involved, especially the Lionstown staff. And so I know that Dolores Vasquez and Marissa Davis and Deb Anthony working part-time really helped a lot in getting the codes that we needed into a spreadsheet and into our electronic system. And that's also an ongoing task as things change with municipal codes and stuff like that. It'll continually be updated for our officers to write appropriate tickets into the appropriate court. So that started last like July and August, and it went live just a month ago. So we're doing that switch over from paper tickets to electronic, and it has gone pretty smooth. And I just wanted to make sure that I credited those folks behind the scenes that really helped on the Lionstown staff for making that work for us. Still proceeding forward with the flock camera system. It seems to have stalled a little bit in the CDOT realm. We are still waiting for site approval, waiting for a message back from CDOT to figure out what the holdup is. I expected that to have already been accomplished by now and installation up. So I am looking back into that, along with some other camera proposals that I'm going to try to bring forward to the town as soon as I can. Those being just general camera systems around town and possibly a red light camera system up at some traffic lights. I'm gonna do some research on that and see if that'll benefit the town. Last week, myself and Town Administrator Simonson and a representative from our co-responders met, and everything went really well in that meeting. It looks like we are moving forward and exploring some options for some space available for a co-responder to be up here pretty much on a full-time basis. I had more interactions with their team today with an unfortunate death notification and a elderly female that was suffering from dementia. And I just can't say that this crew is just phenomenal. They're awesome. Let's see that we had the last thing I want to say is we did have a new graffiti case pop up over the last couple of days underneath the 2nd Avenue Bridge. Fortunately, it's kind of a stagnant case at this point, but it is still open and ongoing. So we are working that case. And that is all I have for tonight's meeting.
I am so thankful for you, Sergeant, and I'm very excited that the co-responder concept is moving along so efficiently, and I'm sure that that we will find space, permanent space for the representative. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Sergeant Chris? If not, please stay safe, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, no boards and commissions, staff reports, utility update. Are you going to take this, Administrator Simonson?
Sure. Director Kaplan is off on a spring break, so he did include his utility report. There was a section in regard to documenting the pre-existing commitments under the 2003 IGA with Longmont regarding water and which lots are yet to be able to hook up without having to make a water dedication. He also documented in his report those properties that are not connected to the town's wastewater system, as that came up last time. As part of that, he did include the annexation agreement with Lions Crest up on Indian Lookout Road, in which there was in writing a commitment that they wanted to be annexed to be able to get basically sheriff services. There's no expectation of water or sewer unless it becomes within 400 feet of their property. So The other item he had was that the Longs Peak Water and Sewer project is in its final stages. Stormwater is complete. And the old road is being removed. It's quite a mess up there with the moisture we've had, but they will be working away on that. And he is saying that they are expecting the asphalt pavement to arrive the first week of April, which is pretty standard for our climate. So they continue to work away on that. Lions Townhomes, he did mention that they're finalizing their pre-blast inspections of the homes within 300 feet and will then start their official 7-day notice to residents of the blasting schedule. Any questions on his report?
We realize that Director Kaplan's not here, but are there any questions that the administrator can forward to him for clarification? Seeing none, your administrator's report.
Thank you. We do want to let the board know that we have been hosting some US 36 Broadway Avenue focus groups with the businesses along that stretch of road that will be seeing the most significant changes. Pretty good attendance, though we were missing a few that I expected that would be there. We are going to then host a public session for the rest of the community's input on the proposed plans and tweaking those on March 31st at 6 p.m. So at your April 4th meeting during the workshop, we are planning to bring forward to you what we heard from the public and the most up-to-date plans. We have a commitment with CDOT to have 30% design complete in the coming weeks. So we want to get that to you guys for your final input on what the businesses and the rest of the public has said they would like to see along that stretch, and then we'll bring that to you for final touches. The Apple Valley water treatment properties, we did select, or I did select Brian Mccain Real Estate to move forward with listing our property. He has got me the agreements, and I've sent those on to Attorney Dittman for his review. He is proposing that it would be on the MLS listing for up to 90 days if we need that long to make a decision. He is offering a 5.7% commissions on the property, or he's asking for that. Human resources, I think all of you know we've been facing some pretty drastic shortages, especially in public works and parks. We are down to just 3 full-time maintenance workers there. And so as we are heading into spring, it's getting kind of to critical mass. We did meet with our with the team this morning to start talking to them about options that they think would be helpful to making those positions more palatable for people who are traveling into Lyons to work, especially with gas prices. And then the HR consultant has come up with several strategies that she's going to be recommending that we consider implementing to try to increase our exposure out there and get some folks hired before the really high season starts in May. We did lose one of our full-time workers. It was not necessarily for anything we did. CDOT took him back. He had retired from there, decided he wanted to work a bit, and so we brought him back on. He used to work for us during the flood actually for several years, and he came back. And then when CDOT offered him overtime pay and quite a bit more in salary, he did decide to take that position. We had a really a good interview with a co-compliance officer, and I have made an offer for employment. We'll hear about that one on Wednesday. And continue to have the planner position open. The Public Works and Parks are 2 main positions still open. I did want to follow up on a comment that I made at a previous meeting that I need to clarify just to clear it up with the public. I'd made a comment that I believe the Sandstone Park loading dock was on the historic register. It apparently is not. Mrs. Laverne, I reached out to her since we did not find it anything. She, of course, said it should be, but it's not. It does meet our definition in our Alliance Municipal Code as being historic because it is more than 50 years old. But it is currently not a landmark designation or on any state or national register. So I did want to clarify that for the public. There's one other thing I do want to bring. I just found out about it late today. I attended a U.S. Treasury session on use of our ARPA funds. And I was really surprised to hear them say that there is a very good possibility we can use our ARPA funds as local match to federal grants. This was previously not thought to be the case, and they clarified that other than programs such as Medicaid and child programs, CHIPS, it could be used. So we may want to look at, I'm going to have our staff get together and take a look again at our ARPA funds to see if there's a way to better leverage those toward our infrastructure projects that have a gap right now, if we aren't going to utilize them all. As you recall, we had $150,000 set aside for Summit. If we don't need to use that, that could potentially become our match to one of our other federal grants. So that was good news. In the COVID world, our community level remains at low, and our current stress on the healthcare system remains low. And that is all good news. Of course, we're watching a new variant, but at this point, it sounds like Boulder County has a good vaccination rate and a good exposure rate to the Omicron variant, not expecting it to be as critical as the last round was, especially with spring arriving. So that's my report for tonight. Any questions?
Any questions for Administrator Simonson, Mayor Pro Tem?
We can possibly use ARPA funds for federal grants. Which of the current, underway or in planning projects that we're looking at are federally grant funded?
The US 36 project is, the Safe Routes to School is. Those both have a federal match, or those are both have some federal funds in them.
So although those come through the state, even if the ultimate source of funds is federal, we can potentially use ARPA funds for that.
Yes, that's what they indicated on our call today.
Okay, thanks.
Additional questions? Administrator Simonson, is the HR person, is that a contract position?
It is.
Okay, I just wanted to know. Because I've never seen her here.
Oh, she spent the whole morning here today.
She did?
Yeah, Dolores and I meet with her Fridays at 11, so we have a weekly standing meeting, and she is starting what she's calling a cultural assessment with our staff to, discuss with them what's going well, what areas do they think we could improve, and to start brainstorming with them on staff, both retainage and hiring strategies. So, yeah. But she's here usually, we meet with her on Fridays.
Okay. Counselor, has anything changed in regard to legal updates?
I have a couple that's really quick.
Good.
I hope updates. First, I want to let the board know that today we did file a joint motion to dismiss with Honeywell in the two federal court cases. So those are filed jointly between Honeywell and the town, given that Honeywell has an interest in keeping the subcontractors in the case. And so those will be forwarded to you hopefully this week for your review. Also, I wanted to briefly touch on a new Colorado District Court case, which is of some importance to the board, and that is Marshall versus Douglas County Board of Education. You may recall the rather contentious firing of the Douglas County School Board administrator that happened a few months ago, I believe. There was a district court case filed out of that that issue, really hinging upon the open meetings laws. And it did have the decision that was handed down 2 weeks ago, or a little less than 2 weeks ago, has pretty big implications for how we conduct open meetings in Colorado generally. You may recall from past conversations that was not explicitly against the Colorado open meetings law to have what we call like serial meetings, where one trustee has a meeting with another trustee, then turns around, has a meeting with another trustee to discuss the same thing, and so on and so forth. So long as there's no more than 3 trustees as part of those meetings, there's no explicit violation of the open meetings laws. This case, the Marshall versus Douglas County case, calls that practice into question, basically saying that it's a violation of the spirit of the open meetings laws to have serial meetings, particularly one where a decision is reached as part of that serial meeting process. And so just the guidance from CML is to avoid serial meetings to the extent possible, kind of given this new case law. I think, personally, my interpretation of this case is if you have, a meeting with one trustee and turn around and have a meeting with another trustee concerning an issue, so long as it's bouncing ideas off to each other, not coming to a ultimate decision on the matter, it probably doesn't violate the holding of this case. But it certainly just goes to show that these things are coming in more scrutiny than they have in the past, and be careful in those types of situations. And this is just a district court decision. It's likely to be appealed. It will probably even go up to the Colorado Supreme Court at some point. But it's just additional things to think about concerning our open meetings laws obligations. So that's all I have in terms of new updates. I'm happy to take any questions. Otherwise, we can continue on with the meeting.
Any questions for Counselor? Interesting, Counselor. Thank you.
Of course.
Madam Clerk, could you please read the next item into the record?
Yes, the next item is the first reading of Ordinance 1121, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending certain sections of Chapter 2, Article 2 of the Lyons Municipal Code concerning board meetings and procedures.
Staff?
I think I'll take this one. We didn't really discuss, but I'll go ahead and take a stab at it. So during some of the more recent quasi-judicial applications we've been having, there's been a need, I think, as all of you recognize, to have special meetings, kind of given the scope of these reviews and the amount of time they consume, and that regular meetings have not been sufficient in terms of, the timing and the amount of time to conduct the business we need to. So we've been having a lot of special meetings lately, much to all of our chagrin and maybe unsatisfaction. But regardless, we've had a lot of special meetings, and during that time, it's been noticed that there was really it needed to be an update of the special meeting process that was in the code. The code was both outdated, and that it required kind of personal notice be served on all of the trustees in order to have a special meeting, and it didn't address things like adopting ordinances at special meetings. And so what we did was took a look at the boards and procedures section of the code, a particular look towards special meetings, and try to update that to reflect what is the reality of how Lyons has been practicing special meetings for at least as long as I've been here, since 2018. There's also some other general updates. One was about referring matters to inferior boards and commissions and committees. The language of that section did not line up with what we both use practically and also what is elsewhere in the code. So we took a stab at trying to update the language to reflect the current practices and terminology and technology used by the Board of Trustees. And so this is just a start. Like any sort of new ordinance, we have to start somewhere. And so I'm happy to take additional recommendations on additional changes that need to be made. But this is staff's attempt that was requested by the board to update these procedures, particular look at special meetings.
Thank you. Are there any questions by the board? If there are not, I'll entertain a motion. Mayor Pro Tem.
I move the adoption of on first reading, of ordinance 1121. Did I get that number right?
Yep.
Okay. To make changes in the special meeting procedures.
Do we have a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any requests to amend? Mayor Pro Tem?
I don't have the formal language of an amendment prepared. I've been traveling away from town. But here, this is just first reading. And these procedures are fine as far as they go, and they update things like not having to personally deliver a notice to somebody's residence and that type of thing that are in the old ordinance. So that's good. But there's one part of the special meeting procedure that needs further details, and that is the code has always allowed a majority of the Board of Trustees to call a special meeting. And then, of course, the mayor can call a special meeting anytime the mayor wants to. But the code never says how a majority of the board can call a special meeting. And as we just heard, if the trustees collectively can't talk to each other by email or in person, and you can't have a serial meeting one after another, do you want to have a special meeting? Do you want to have a special meeting and reach a decision that way? How do you do it? And that's come up a couple of times since I've been on the board. And I think the basic procedure that council has suggested a time or two is if a trustee believes that we need to have a special meeting, that the trustee can contact the town clerk, ask the town clerk to basically poll the board by saying, trustee A has requested a special meeting on this subject. Are you in favor of a special meeting? But that procedure isn't spelled out in the code anywhere. And I think if the code's going to provide that a majority of the board can call a special meeting, it ought to say how to do it. And I don't have the language to suggest here tonight by amendment, but prior to adoption on second reading, I'd like to see that added. And maybe town attorney has some examples from other places or that he could suggest on that. That's my
Counselor?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And after, you sent me an email over the weekend, I did do some research on this and try to find some examples. And surprisingly, there's not a lot out there, but I thought Longmont had a pretty good one in terms of the ones I was able to look at. At least, I didn't spend a ton of time on this, but try to hit up some communities I knew about what they had. And Longmont says that special meetings of the council shall be called by the clerk on the written request of the mayor or any two members of the council on at least 24 hours written notice. And so it doesn't require a polling of the board per se. It just requires that there be two trustees essentially send in the request. I still think it'd be a good idea, for the clerk to make sure that people are available on a certain day. But what I think it may be problematic, kind of especially given that new case law, is it sort of a substantive discussion of whether or not you would like to have a special meeting or not. So maybe, and I wrote this before I was aware of that case, the proposed ordinance, and before I really thought through this issue. But maybe we change it on the next reading to just be two trustees can email the clerk, and then the meeting shall be called, and it should be up to the clerk to determine when people are available. Just a suggestion for the board to consider, kind of given the Longmont language, which I like.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the clerk's role would just basically be to inform the rest of the board that two trustees have requested a meeting and say, are you available on a certain date? And then I guess maybe it could say something like, if a quorum is available, then you can have a special meeting. And if not available, then I guess you try another time or date or time or something.
Right. I think it would take, that'd be a preferable ways. It would take the discretion kind of out of it, where, the board potentially debating via email with the clerk whether or not they want to have a special meeting.
Okay.
So I like that concept. But of course, the board gets to determine what the policy is.
So if we wanted to do something like that, we could do it by way of proposed amendment with actual language at second reading.
Yep. Yeah. We can certainly, I can try to write something up that the board's in favor of that, and then we can consider it on second reading. But it would look like we would change from a majority to two members requesting, and the clerk shall determine a time at which a quorum is available to have that special meeting.
Thank you.
Trustee Rogan.
Thank you, Mayor. I like that suggestion very much, and I would also like to include that the subject of the special meeting be included in the clerk's communication with the board.
Okay, we can do that.
Further comments? I like the idea as well, and I like Trustee Rogan's suggestion as well. I think that 2 board members being able to call a special meeting is precludes us from having any open meeting law. I'm searching for the word.
Violations.
Thank
Issue,
you very much. Any open meeting violation, but I'll just remind anybody that if any member of this Board of Trustees, single member, requested a special meeting of the mayor, they would be granted that special meeting. So I would also like that language in there somewhere, that all that needs to be done really, it isn't a matter of the mayor having this additional power to call a special meeting. It's also the respect of any individual board member to request of the mayor to have a special meeting. And I'd like some kind of language like that included as well. Because like I said, it isn't just the prerogative, and never has been, of only the mayor being able to call a special meeting. And if you can get that in writing, Counselor, more power to you. Mayor Pro Tem?
yeah, I agree. The mayor could always do it, but of course, you could have a situation where 2 trustees want to have a special meeting, but the mayor doesn't want to have a special meeting. And so that situation needs to be addressed. You shouldn't leave it, I don't think, totally with the discretion of the mayor. You know,
That isn't what I said.
from past experience, it might have happened a time or two, but anyway.
But I mean, that isn't what I said, and that wasn't the intent of what I said.
Yeah.
What I said basically was, if a mayor respects his board members and they request a special meeting, that it should be called. And if a mayor doesn't want a special meeting for any reason whatsoever, that it only take 2 board members to call it. No problem.
Agreed.
Counselor?
Yeah, I want to address the request by Trustee Rogan about the purpose of the special meeting be included. I went ahead and reread the language, and it does actually already include that the notice be delivered either personally or electronically at least 24 hours before the meeting, and the notice shall state the date and the hour of the meeting and the purpose for which the meeting is called.
Great, thank you.
Okay,
That's fine.
just wanted to make sure we had that covered.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, we have a motion and a second, do we not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Carabas,
Aye.
Trustee Lowe,
Aye.
Ordinance 1121 passes unanimously on first reading. Madam Clerk, could you please read the next item into the record?
Yes, the next item is the first reading of ordinance 1122, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, repealing and replacing chapter 16, article 8 of the Lyons Municipal Code concerning off-street parking regulations.
Staff?
Hello, good evening, Mayor and Trustees. During a recent development review, aspects of the town's off-street parking regulations did not appear to align with the town's parking needs, and staff was directed to propose changes to the code. The code the changes proposed are intended to better ensure the safety and welfare of the public, align with federal laws, and allow for expanded parking opportunities and future economic development. I've provided a summary in my staff cover sheet of what these changes include, which are generally allowing the Board of Trustees discretion to waive certain requirements, defining adjacent on-street parking, further defining mixed-use parking minimum requirements, increasing the distances allowed for the location of off-street parking facilities to 3,000-foot maximum, allowing for valet or shuttles to expand off-street parking opportunities, and updating the code to comply with current federal requirements. So the red line has also been included in your packet, and I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the ordinance. And
Counselor?
Yeah, and if I may just kind of add on to that, it was a team effort to draft this, but I kind of took the initial stab at trying to draft changes to this section of the code concerning off-street parking regulations. And it was very much an attempt to try to encapsulate some of the Board of Trustees' ideas during previous discussions. However, it's by no means perfect. It is a starting place. It's just something to start your discussions on, and none of us will be offended if your ideas around the words adjacent or how far something should be allowed. The circle we draw for off-street parking is different in your mind. This is just intended to be a starting place. And very much up to the Board of Trustees to determine the policy. So just wanted to kind of add that additional disclaimer.
Are there any questions? Trustee Rogan?
Thank you. Thanks for this. I'm sure it was a lot of work and really appreciated. So I have two questions. The first question is, was the PCDC involved with this at all? Because it seems to me that parking is a land use issue, really.
no, PCDC wasn't involved. It was sort of a quick turnaround, I guess. And Brandon, from the development review to now, so they were not involved.
Okay.
And that's not a requirement, correct? Because it's a parking regulation. It's not a zoning code text amendment. So the process is different for parking regulations and didn't require PCDC, but I'm happy to hear your input on that.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is about the adjacent thing, and I'll be offering an amendment to this later, but what if we were to define adjacent as also across the street, and one business kind of put dibs on, during a development, put dibs on the spaces that were both contiguous and across the street from them, and then the business across the street wanted to do a redevelopment, and they wanted to count the parking spaces contiguous to them, what would happen? Because we wouldn't be able to double up there.
So, I mean, currently we don't have a sort of, I guess, tracker for this. And I guess there's existing businesses that are unknown how many spaces they use. So I agree that could propose a problem. And so I guess one other thought we did talk about as well is eliminating if there's a commercial use across the street as well, not allowing it if it was just non-commercial. So that was another discussion we had.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, this is a very difficult issue that we kind of went back and forth with, I think, and we heard kind of varying things from the board in the previous discussion. So what we came up with was just allowing across the street, if the street was contiguous, so long as it wasn't a residential use, as you want, business parking in someone's front yard. But I mean, we're open for suggestions on this one. It's a difficult issue, and I'm not exactly sure how we avoid it, because I think right now there's double counting going on, and unless the town's doing a good job of tracking, it's going to be difficult to do, I think.
Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a question? No, I'd like to ask one. Has there been any thought to expanding and enforcing, and enforcing is the key word here, the 2-hour parking on both High Street and Railroad Avenue bordering Sandstone Park.
I guess speaking to that, although I haven't really been involved in those conversations on enforcement with this. I know the 2 hours would probably cause a lot of parking issues with some of the businesses that are there now, but I guess Victoria, if you want to speak more to this.
Administrator Simonson?
We did pursue this once before, the 2-hour parking. We had a code compliance that worked only weekends. Otherwise, again, I think it could be a staffing issue, but certainly, it is in the code, and we could enforce it if the board is willing to fund a position to do so.
The reason that I ask this is after Trustee Miller, and I hope she doesn't mind me using her name in this context, mentioned at a meeting that, and I'm just going to be honest, that bicyclists basically jam up High Street for a majority of the weekends. And they also do the same thing, and you can tell because of the bike racks on the back of their cars, Railroad Avenue. It would seem to me that if we could come up, it isn't just enforcement, it's alternatives as well. If we could come up with a way to let them know that they could access the Second Avenue parking lot and alleviate the congestion in the immediate downtown area, that could help strive toward a solution. And I think that's as worthy to pursue as basically an enforcement mechanism. Although I still think that the signs should be there. Just because I think they're a friendly reminder of don't just camp here all day. This is a situation where you want your customers to be able to have access to the businesses, not to have somebody park for 6 or 7 hours and make it really difficult and inconvenient for somebody to park in front of a business and generate income for the town by purchasing merchandise. So I just like that to be at least considered as an option. I don't think it's that difficult. And they use a lot of parking spaces, and I mean, I understand bicyclists and I understand their impact to the businesses as well, because I've talked to businesses and they love the bicyclists, but all day is unacceptable. Administrator Simonson.
I do think it's a fairly easy, not easy, but I think one of the ways to really reduce it on Railroad Avenue is just to advertise that no vehicles beyond a certain length can park there, because it is a safety issue, and I've heard it from the fire department as well. When they need to leave and go down Railroad, and there's SUVs with the extra 4 or 5 feet of bikes on the back, if someone has parked along the post office curb, they really can't get through there very safely. So I think we could do that with some signage and reduce it significantly. We have the names of some of the bike groups in the area we could send a notice to and a map to try to encourage people to move. But as you said, I think at least one of our high street businesses actually count on a lot of the bicyclists to do commerce in their business. So they may not feel the same.
Counselor?
Yeah, I just wanted to confess that prior to being town attorney, I parked on Railroad Avenue to go cycling, and I'm sorry, I did not know it was a problem. And I just want to put that on the record that I confessed my crime, and I'm sorry I did it.
Your excuse, sir.
Thank you.
No problem. No problem. Okay, let's see. Let's see, where are we? Any further questions?
Strom has his hand raised.
Oh, Planet Strom.
Just a little more context to this as well. I think, as Brandon spoke to, this was identified in that development review process, and we identified some, issues that we wanted to resolve quickly. And that's what we jumped onto. I think there's a much larger parking discussion on limits and regulation that needs to take place and will. But I think we haven't gone to the PCDC. We haven't had detailed discussions on this. This was to resolve some of those issues we saw. So I just wanted to provide a little context, and not that we shouldn't have those discussions or dig into it. And I think we plan to, but just a note on what this is or what we brought today. So
This is every single new board member on the next Board of Trustees identified this as one of the major problems. So it is going to be discussed. It is going to be further discussed, and hopefully perhaps some of the suggestions that come out of any open meeting will be incorporated in the solution. Okay, any further questions? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to pass ordinance 1122 on first reading, an ordinance of the town of Lyons repealing and replacing chapter 16, article 8 of the LMC concerning off-street parking regulations.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any amendments offered at this time? Trustee Rogan.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would move to amend section 16-8-20K, the adjacent on-street parking definition. So it says, for the purpose of the subsection, adjacent shall mean parking which is contiguous with the subject property or which is directly across a contiguous street relative to the subject property, but shall not include parking directly across from single-family residential uses. And I would like to strike everything after contiguous with the subject property.
Excuse me, Trustee Rogan, what was that section again?
That's 16-8-20, item K.
Thank you.
So, and it's the last sentence of that paragraph. So that last sentence would read, for the purposes of the subsection, adjacent shall mean parking which is contiguous with the subject property.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments?
Can I explain my reasoning, Mayor?
You may, of course.
So the main reason is that what we talked about earlier, that kind of doubling up, and also not wanting to take spaces away from a business that needs them. We heard from the upholstery shop, and I know that we're not exactly marking spaces, like this space belongs to this business, this space belongs to that business, but I think we need to keep it freed up enough so that all the businesses in town have equal opportunity to have people park and have customers come in. I know that it's a concern of the Lyons Physical Therapy that people are going to get pushed to park on High Street and they won't have parking for their clients. So those are my reasons.
Any further comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I agree with Trustee Rogan on this. I mean, like she says, it's not a matter of, people actually reserving parking places or being specifically designated for businesses. It's really just a matter of if you essentially double count spaces across the street all over downtown, you end up way short of having enough spaces to serve all the businesses. And it's not just the businesses, it's also the property owners. If somebody wants to expand, add a second story, whatever, and needs to meet the off-street parking regulations, you can't have two businesses expand and count the same spaces without being short of spaces. And the effect of not counting those doesn't mean that you necessarily would deny a proposed development. It just means that they're going to have to be more creative and expansive with off-street parking to satisfy whatever total number of spaces that they may need. And we'd be taking steps in this ordinance to address that. If you expand the 700-foot rule that no one's sure why it's in there to a 3,000-foot rule, then you've got more opportunities to find additional off-street parking. So I think these things go hand in hand, and I think this amendment makes sense, and I support it.
Further comments? Can I ask Planner Strong that when it says or which is directly across a contiguous street relative to the subject property, in the case of something that is current before us, would that preclude any use of the southern Broadway improvements parking if this were passed?
Correct, that the southern portions of Broadway. Well, one, I guess, for anything that's before us, anything that's before us applies the current code. So this would have to be after this ordinance is passed and takes effect. But this would preclude across the street parking.
Can I expand on that, Mayor, for a second,
You
please?
may.
Yeah, thank you. So this would not apply retroactively. Any application has already come through the town. It would be subject to the prior code. This would be for any future application before the Board of Trustees. So if you're referring to an application the board has already considered and approved, this would not retroactively retroactively evaluate parking compliance for that application, put it that way.
So in the situation that is before us, the southern parking spaces on the Broadway project are not available to solve any parking situation. Is that correct?
That's incorrect because parking compliance has already been determined by virtue of the land use approval that has been given. This would apply to any future applications. There's no pending land use application before the Board of Trustees, only a development plan agreement.
Thank you. Okay, I think I understand now. Any further comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Just to be clear, this wouldn't preclude use of those parking spaces. It would just not allow them to be counted as on-street parking to satisfy that part of the formula. It doesn't, they can still use the parking. It doesn't preclude use of it. It's how you count. And if you don't count parking spaces across the street as adjacent on-street parking, then they're going to have to come up with more off-street parking, but it doesn't preclude the use of them by any means.
Yes, that is also true. I mean, for any future application.
Any further comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. No further comments. I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning.
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Carvis,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
and Trustee Watt did have to step away for just a few minutes, sir.
Okay, the amendment to ordinance 1122 passes 6-0. Are there any further amendments to be offered at this time? Trustee Careless.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add an amendment to same section 16.8.20, but E as an echo, landscaping. Number one, I've got two different options. This is for first reading. I'll be more than happy to, as I read them or let you know them, we can massage them as a group, or I can just put one in and then we can deal with it in the second reading. But when it indicates a low 3 foot to 4 foot decorative fence or wall between the requirement landscape area and the parking area, I would change or add to after decorative fence of non-combustible materials. Or a second option would be using the word, following the word decorative metal, iron, aluminum, or any other town alliance approved non-combustible materials, basically a preemptive strike to fire task force, because wood fencing in this environment, I personally never been a fan of, because it does act as a wick or can accumulate dry branches, leaves, and things. I wish I could say the likelihood of something happening is pretty slim to none, but after the windstorm of December 31st, all the wrong things happened at the right time to create that hazard that occurred south of us. So just eliminate one spot for something like that would be a good start as we move through our task force. Brandon?
Trustee Karas, can you say the list of materials again? Sorry, I didn't catch all of that.
Let's see, the second one I read, or the second one I stated?
So I have a low 3 feet or 4 feet of decorative fence of non-combustible materials or wall made of a list. And so I'm trying to get what that list was.
Oh, or it was going to be a second option would be, and it depends on what my fellow trustees.
Okay, so it's an either or, it's not non-combustible.
So the other one was decorative metal, iron, aluminum, basically just kind of listing it out there.
Okay. I think
some people in the construction business will consider the plastic woods or the fake wood materials non-combustible, but when they're made of man-made materials, i.e. some kind of oil product, eventually that will combust too. Once it does get going, it can burn at different temperatures and different velocities than the wood itself. So it's just kind of what something to think about. If you prefer me to just pick one, I'll pick one and go with that.
Yeah, I think we need to pick one, but I would offer perhaps a decorative fence of non-combustible materials as approved by the town. That way the town could say no oil-based products, in the future.
That sounds good to me. I'll take that as my motion or my amendment.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any comments? No further comments? I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
and Trustee Waugh.
The amendment as stated by Trustee Caravas passes unanimously. Are there any additional amendments to be offered at this time? If not, we'll vote on ordinance 1122 as amended. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye. He says aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Rogan,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Miller.
Yay.
Ordinance 1122 passes unanimously on first reading. Madam Clerk, could you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Yes, sir. Item 1 is Resolution 2022-27, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, accepting public improvements of the Bone Park Stormwater Improvement Project, Red Hill Gulch. Item 2 is Resolution 2022-28, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, accepting public improvements of the Lyons Second Avenue Bridge Replacement Project. Item 3 is Resolution 2022-29, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, approving an amendment to the Lyons Planning Area Comprehensive Development Plan Intergovernmental Agreement. Item 4 are the March accounts payable. Item 5 are the January 13th, 2022 Special Board of Trustees meeting minutes. Item 6 are the February 23rd, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting minutes. And item 7 are the March 7th, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any trustees would like removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
and Trustee Rogan.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved unanimously. Could you please read the next item into the record, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. The first item under general business is discussion and direction regarding the Mccain agreement.
Staff,
Excuse me, Town Clerk, you were not on. They moved the request by Peter Baumgartner first.
Oh, when I lost my Zoom. Okay, so then that would be, the first thing would be, I guess, discussion direction regarding the marquee display request by Peter Baumgartner.
Madam Clerk, staff report.
Actually, I'll do that. Mr. Peter Baumgartner made a request to the mayor to, and it's included in your packet, to ask that a upcoming production of a theater musical production of Death of a Pugilist be able to be advertised on the town's marquee located between Main Street and Broadway. And currently, our town policy does not allow for use of the marquee. And also that's also attached for events that are not town sanctioned events that are funded or that are wholly or partially funded by the town or organized by a charitable organization associated with the town. So the course of action is to bring that in front of the Board of Trustees to see if they would like to make an exception to that policy in order to advertise it at this point.
For the record, Mr. Baumgartner did not make that request of me. That request was made previous to any discussion I had with, at one time, my fellow trustee, Peter Baumgartner. Could you read what it states in the policy in regard to what action the Board of Trustees can take in regard to requests like this?
It is, let me find it here. The policy is attached and it is item number, actually, I don't see it listed. I see that they can appeal it to the town administrator. There is a line in the purpose statement, the policy statement, that says the policy may be revoked at any time by the Board of Trustees.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Further, is there any discussion on the matter? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'd like to add something to the background too. When I became aware of this issue, my reading of the policy was that it did not allow the town staff to make an exception. It doesn't say that in there. It says you can appeal, but if you appeal, I suppose the town staff has to apply the policy as written by the board. And so when I read it, then I requested that it be put on the agenda so that the board could address the issue and perhaps, and I hoped, authorize the use of the marquee for this upcoming event. I don't know why it was put on the agenda in the form it was, as a matter under trustee reports where we don't normally take action. I think it should have been put on the agenda in such a manner that the board could take action. And as the administrator just said, the policy says that the board can repeal it at any time. So I guess if we had to, we could repeal the policy, and then there wouldn't be a policy prohibiting the use of the publicity, and then we could reinstate the policy at our next meeting or whenever we wanted to do it. But it doesn't. This seems like to me a lot of trouble to do something simple, which is to publicize for about 1 week a cultural event in Lyons. The policy seems to me to be very, very much overly restrictive. A policy like this, like many things we see in the code, should have a statement in there that the Board of Trustees may waive it for good cause shown. But if we're advised that we can't add something like that to the policy tonight because of the way it was noticed, then I guess we're perhaps limited to what could be a temporary repeal of the policy and then reinstate it. And I'd like to see it fixed with allowing the board to waive the policy or modify it upon request for good cause shown. But there ought to be a way to figure out how to put a simple message on a town marquee for a week to publicize a cultural event that's headlined essentially by someone, Mensa Wu, who has done great things for the cultural background of Lyons for many years. She's put on many events. She sponsored Sound of Lyons for many years, and events like that ought to be able to be publicized on the town marquee or in a town email. And this policy that I frankly didn't know existed until I saw it maybe Friday, it should be loosened somewhat. I know you can't publicize every concert that takes place in a commercial music venue around here, but I think you should at least be able to use town resources to publicize events that are held at a school or at a library. I mean, if the school jazz band gives a concert, why shouldn't you be able to put that on the marquee? That doesn't make any sense. So I think this policy needs loosening. And if the only thing we can do tonight, and maybe there's another way, but I don't see it in the policy, is to temporarily repeal this policy, let the publicity be done, and then institute a new policy better written. That's what I'd be in favor of.
Thank you, Trustee Lowe.
Yeah, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Browning. I just want to remind you all that when I was putting together the annual report, I also decided, and I think the consensus of the board, or at least their unstated consensus, was that it would be okay to put in the annual report organizations within the town of Lyons that aren't necessarily town affiliated, things like, the Lions Club, the Lions Garden Club, and that sort of thing, because I think they contribute to the fabric of our community and should be so recognized. And likewise with this marquee, I think, as Mayor Pro Tem said, I think it's overly restrictive, and we should use our good judgment, or allow town staff to use their good judgment to publicize events within the town. How often is that marquee actually used? How often are notices posted on it? I don't see it changing an awful lot as I drive through town. Maybe I'm just not paying attention. But just a question for staff, how often are things posted on that?
Administrator Simonson.
To answer your question, they're changed as frequently as we have the next upcoming town-sponsored events. So I was seated, I was here when this policy went into effect. We were having really significant issues with for-profit businesses wanting to use it, competing political interests. Actually, since this issue was just brought up on the 17th, I've had 3 requests from the public to use it. And it became the judgment of the staff. We had to be really subjective, and it was making people angry. And so the board at the time that was seated adopted this policy. If the board so chooses to, put this as a change to a resolution, I'm fine with that. If we want to try to update it to include cultural events, or if the board chooses school or other library, that's fine. But at the time, and obviously still today, every cycling event wants on, you wouldn't believe how many people want to use the marquee.
Are there any further comments? I'll just remind the board, like I stated from the LAHC meeting that we just had, that this will also be a fundraiser for the LAHC. And for all intents and purposes, that was why I was interested in advertising it, at least over the weekend, because I don't know if anybody saw the traffic this weekend, but it was just like off the charts because it was so beautiful here. And promotion 101, it would have been nice if it was noticed a little bit sooner, and considering that what's on there now is advertising an event that's already taken, 2 events that have already taken place. So I would favor loosening the restrictions by resolution by the next board, and allowing the advertising for death of a pugilist to be put on the marquee. How does the rest of the board feel? Trustee Lowell?
Yeah, I agree.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Perhaps we could interpret, if the LAHC is going to potentially use this as a fundraiser.
Yes.
I'm not sure what constitutes a town-sponsored event. If a town board or commission is involved and benefits from it, could we perhaps, at least for this particular event, decide as a board that this would be considered a town, at least a town affiliated event in some respect? I don't know. Maybe that's a stopgap solution, but
Trustee Miller?
for publicizing that on the town
How
marquee.
do you feel, Trustee Miller?
I mean, I don't want it to be a big hassle for the staff to have to, field a bunch of requests one way or make decisions one way or the other. I don't know. I can see both sides, I guess. I think if it's for a fundraiser for one of our nonprofits, I think it's fine. But I don't really think that the events coming through, such as cyclists and that sort of thing, should be able to use it, I guess. In my opinion.
Trustee Watt?
First of all, I'd say that I'm in favor of Mr. Baumgartner's request, and I would like to see that on the marquee. I think in general, this is an economic vitality commission issue. And this is an opportunity for us to advertise events that create economic viability. And I think that perhaps that they should come up with a policy or an approach in cooperation with staff to list these events. I think cycling events and so forth that perhaps bring people to town or bring people through town with the opportunity to stop and spend money or enjoy some of the amenities of our town should have that opportunity. And I don't think it should be on staff. I think it should be, I think there should be an approach that is, considers, what the marquee is there for. It's to educate town citizens, but, based on its placement, it's also for people driving through town to know when they should come to, when maybe they should stop in town and when they should participate in activities that are in town. So, you know, that's my take on it. I think it's, you know, asking staff to make those decisions, you know, is probably not the best use of their time and resources. So I think, you know, perhaps, you know, asking the Economic Vitality Commission if they could make some recommendations about how that is. Maybe there's an advertising fee to use some things on this marquee if it's appropriate. So that's just my take on it. But, you know, I'd say based on this agenda item, I'd like to say that I'd like to approve Mr. Baumgartner's request.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, but-
Trustee Logan.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm fine with Mr. Baumgartner's request. I have no idea whether the new board will have the appetite to take a look at this policy. I have a feeling this policy was put into place for very good reasons that we just heard about. And I noticed that Administrator Simonson has had her hand up, and I'd really like to hear what her input is, if that's okay with you.
When I'm polling the board, I do not want anybody interrupting until I poll the board completely. And that's why I haven't recognized Administrator Simonson until now. Ma'am?
I was going to offer, I'm not aware that any of these proceeds go to the Arts and Humanities Council. It just says it has support from them. And actually, I got a note from one of them saying they are not associated with this at all. So I have different information than you did, Mayor. And I just wanted you to pass that along before you polled. Not that it matters. I'm fine if the board still wants to do this, but there's no indication from Mr. Baumgartner or the LAHC that they benefit from this or they're involved in any way.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a benefit for
I
them
can
either.
wait a second. I can guarantee you 100% that this was discussed at the last LAHC meeting as a fundraiser and has actually been expanded as a fundraiser. I can guarantee the Board of Trustees 100% that that is the case. I think that the consensus of the Board of Trustees was to approve Mr. Baumgartner's request. Thank you. Could you read the next item into the record, please?
Yes, the next item under general business is discussion and direction regarding the Mccain agreement.
Staff?
Hello. So recent construction at the Safe Routes to School project brought up a request from the property owner at 431 4th Avenue, Mr. Steve Mccain, to access his property from 4th Avenue. And that conflicts with the conditions of approval of the rezoning of the property that was completed to general industrial that was approved last fall. Also, Mr. Mccain has not completed the required fence screening at the property that was required to be completed by March 7th and has requested an extension. Staff recommends meeting the conditions of approval originally agreed upon and denial of vehicular access to the property at 4th Avenue and with the installation of a vertical curb for the project as it was planned. Additionally, granting an extension of the date for the fence installation is recommended with having both the rear and front fence, front as in facing 4th Avenue, installed by Memorial Day weekend. For some background on this, I'm sure you're all aware, but Mr. Mccain operates an excavation business on the property, and he requested the rezoning last fall from commercial to general industrial to allow his business operation. The rezoning was approved by the board in September with conditions of approval. The applicant had proposed terminating the driveway off 4th Avenue due to the safety concerns for the safe route to school that was proposed. The conditions of the ordinance did not specifically deny light vehicle access from 4th Avenue, but the intent of the agreement, as it was shown in the applicant's presentation and the exhibit that shows only fencing and person gates for access, was clear that the intent was no vehicular access. Regarding the status of the fence installation, Mr. Mccain has purchased materials and began installation of the fence. He has been delayed by frozen ground, which is why he's requesting the extension. And the fence in front along 4th Avenue is a shorter fence, and that's required to be completed 3 months after the completion of the Safe Routes to School sidewalk that's adjacent to the property. And that sidewalk is currently under construction and should be completed in the next 2 weeks. So staff is recommending that all fencing, the front and the rear, be completed by Memorial Day weekend. I see a numbers just jumped on, so hopefully that's Mr. Mccain, but I've spoken to Mr. Mccain a few times about this since the rezoning. I spoke to him today and I asked to make sure he could attend himself. He wasn't unsure if he could make it, but I think it was, important for him to make this request himself, not necessarily putting staff in the middle of this. But he also discussed some requests today with me about changing the location of the fence in front of 4th Avenue to just between the buildings. So at this point, I've provided staff's recommendation, and I think if Mr. Mccain were, maybe he's on the line, could maybe speak for his request.
Is there any additional staff input? Counselor, do you have anything to add?
No, I think the agreement is what it is. I would just note that if he doesn't follow the conditions of the agreement and it's not otherwise changed, the zoning is not effective. It was conditional approval of the zoning. Until those are met, the zoning is not effective, and that he would be in violation of the pre-existing zoning of the property.
Thank you. Is Mr. McCain on and wish to speak with the Board of Trustees? Madam Clerk?
No, sir, no one's got their hand raised or
Thank
indicate
you.
they'd like to speak.
If I
Okay.
might, I don't know if the phone number calling in is Mr. McCain or not, but if it is, it's not, okay. I was gonna say, just might not know how to unmute on the phone, but okay.
That was
Wait
Tracy
a second,
Sanders.
Wait a second. Wait a second. Let's be recognized. Okay, this isn't an open discussion. Are there any comments that the Board of Trustees would wish to make at this time? Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm fine with the staff's recommendations on the deadlines by which the fence as set forth in the agreement without a gate that would allow continued access to 4th Avenue across the Safe Routes to School sidewalk. That was not in the agreement. It's clear by the drawings and the conditions that were put on. And just for the record, I think Attorney Dittman has already stated this, that if it's not completed by a board set deadline, then the zoning change that was approved is not effective. And he would be in violation of the zoning code, and appropriate enforcement action could be taken. Just generally, and this applies to a number of things, including the next item on the agenda. When somebody comes before this board and requests a special favor, in this case, it was a favor of a rezoning that town staff recommended be denied, that the PCDC unanimously recommended be denied, and that, as far as I saw, it was contrary to the comp plan. But the board grants that conditioned on something like building a fence to protect a safe routes to school. It is, I'll just say, not a good idea to come back before the board and then try to retrade the agreement that there was substantial reason not to grant in the first place. And when you make an agreement with this board and make promises to the board, you're expected to live up to them. And I think the staff's deadlines for completing the solid fence, not with a removable gate, are very reasonable. And I'm fully supportive of the board specifying those deadlines by which, if it's not done, the zoning change goes away.
Further comments? Can I ask, trustee Rogan, go ahead.
Thank you. I completely agree with Mayor Pro Tem and am extremely frustrated. I think we all know how frozen the ground is or is not at the moment. And I would add that there should absolutely be no driveway poured on 4th. Just to make that incredibly clear. I think staff in their recommendations have been very generous with Mr. McCain. And I want to see him meet these conditions.
Further comments? Trustee Lowe.
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem and Trustee Rogan on this issue. It was a tough decision for me, at least, to grant the industrial zoning to Mr. McCain. I did so because I believe that after, I don't know what it was, 17 or 19 years of him doing business there, it seemed more than fair that he should be allowed to continue his business under the umbrella of industrial zoning. But as part of that, we crafted an agreement that he was bound to. And so far, it seems like, at least with the fence, I think that fence should have been installed by now. I think it's generous of staff to grant him till Memorial Day to finish it. And I wholeheartedly agree. No access, zero vehicular access through 4th Avenue. That should be a solid fence.
Further comments? Planner Strong. Trustee Caravas, did you want to speak? I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would state my agreement with most of my colleagues, and I agree with Greg on questioning why it's May 27th and not something like May 10th, May 1st, because plenty of time when we pass the ordinance to get supplies and put a fence in. The ground was not frozen in December and January of this year because I was actually digging in it. So cold spells didn't snap in and go hard freeze until late January or February and didn't last that long. I would rather see the time to get it done shortened. And I agree with it, like I say, with everyone else. No driveway on that side, no fence on that 4th Avenue side also, or no gate, excuse me, no gate and no driveway.
Planner Strom, does the 4th Avenue, in relation to what Trustee Lowell said, is the 4th Avenue fence to be a solid fence?
Yeah, so the 4th Avenue fence would be a solid fence. And I would just note that the requirement for the fence along 4th is 3 months after the completion of the Safe Routes to School sidewalk, which is under construction now. So that would be, if it's done in the next week or two, you're talking, it could be July. So I guess that's why there's the leniency in the rear fence. Actually, ideally overall, I was just pushing him to get everything done by Memorial Day weekend. But yeah, hopefully he would do that rather than use the entire 3 months in the condition of past the Safe Routes to School. And it is a continuous fence with 2-person gates proposed on it in the exhibit, I guess towards the south, but no vehicular gate or access shown.
And I agree with my fellow trustees about vehicular access off of 4th. But let me ask you another question. Is it a CDOT or federal requirement that that sidewalk on that side of the street be a 90-degree angle?
So, sorry, I'm trying to follow you. A 90-degree angle.
Yeah, instead of a Hollywood curve.
Oh, the straight curb. No, I mean, no, that's not a CDOT requirement. It's town road, but typically we don't install. We have straight curbs where there's not a driveway, so that would be the intent.
I understand that, but it's a safe route to school project. And I think that that there should be some consideration given to, oh, let's use the example of maybe a bicycle that a child is riding going over a 90-degree curb. That could be very impactful. I just like a little analysis. I know that it borders an industrial zone, but I also know that originally that curb going around Fourth towards Town Hall, that was a 90-degree curve originally, and it was changed to a Hollywood curve, and I'm really glad it was, because I've gone up on it about probably 15 times on my way to Town Hall, including during snowstorms when the curb would have been impossible to see and would have impacted the side of my car, the side of the sheriff's department cars, especially because of the construction that had to take place at the corner. That was a very tight curb to take. So I just like some thought given to that. Other than that, you know, there has been a lot of construction and a lot of big heavy equipment there. And I'm sure once it clears out and the drainage pipe project is completed, that the person making the request will move expeditiously on finishing what he promised to do. He better. Any other comments?
Town clerk has her
Osborne?
hand up.
Town clerk?
Yes, Tracy Sanders is on the phone, sir, and she'd like to speak to this item.
Good. Tracy, you're recognized. Tracy?
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to your question about CDOT standards for the curb. The curb type of curb is not being dictated by CDOT as stated, but in general, the vertical curb is being utilized in areas where it's not like considered non-residential. So along that area, that is why the vertical curb is being proposed, because it's industrial. And the driveway that was originally installed, or the California curb that was installed 2 summers ago, was supposed to be vertical originally, and it was changed per the request of Mr. Mccain so that he could access his property. And I do believe the town is supporting the vertical curb as well for parking, additional parking. So just wanted to add some background to that question that you had.
Can we not park next to a California curb?
Generally, I think that you can. I think generally it just appears not to be parking space area. It may be possible to do California curb and do parking space delineators on the road. So it's whatever the town would prefer to do, because we do have mixed types of curbs throughout town. But I think when we did the paving project, it was thought residential area, we would do California curb or rollover curb, and then other areas it would just be vertical, and just trying to set a standard of consistency.
Okay. My concern was for the children again. Whatever the board decides at the time will be fine with me.
Yeah, and we are adding, I just wanted to add one more thing. We are adding the ADA ramps at every corner. So it would be easy to get up onto the sidewalk, whether you're whatever however you're, if you're riding a bike or whatever you're trying to get up onto the sidewalk with, every corner will now have a ADA ramp there available as well.
Planner Strom, you have an addition?
Just a quick to add, I think, the vertical curb would increase the safety. I mean, that really promotes the separation of the vehicles from the road, from the pedestrian way, but so just adding to that.
Mayor Pro Tem?
My opinion is that what type of curb you put on what kind of street should be done by the town engineers and town staff according to normal standards, and that's not something the Board of Trustees should get involved in because we don't have the expertise to do it. And that's a classic example of something I would defer to the town staff on.
Okay. So what direction would the Board of Trustees like to go? What I get out of the discussion is that we abide by staff recommendation. Trustee Lowe?
Are we talking specifically on the curb or the overall issue?
Overall issue.
Yes, I concur with staff.
Trustee Kurvis?
I'll concur with staff.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Same, I concur with staff.
Trustee Miller?
I'll concur.
Trustee Wall?
I concur. I don't necessarily see an issue with there being a gate or a fence opening as long as there's not a driveway. I think the ability to get things in and out of that side of the property is not an issue, but otherwise, I think we need to have a fence there so that the applicant can meet the requirements.
Trustee Rogan?
I concur. I go with staff recommendations.
You have your direction, staff. Thank you for the recommendation. And thank you for the discussion, Board of Trustees. Could you please read the next item into the record, Madam Clerk?
Yes, the next item is item 3, discussion direction, staff Spirit Hounds water dedication with request.
Staff?
I guess I can address this. The town administrator and the Board of Trustees received a formal agenda request from Craig Engelhorn with Spirit Hound Distillers. That's included in your packet tonight. It is writing to request that the town of Lyons grant to Spirit Hounds 1.4 Lake McIntosh water shares for the purposes of economic development. This is directly related to an increase in the production and increased sales tax for the town. I did see that the applicant, they previously, I don't know if they still are, they were on the line. Oh, yes, they still are. If you would like to hear the request directly from them.
Okay, is there any additional staff input? Counselor?
We do have a cover memo from Aaron Kaplan that was included in your packet.
All right. But Counselor, you don't have anything to add at this time?
No, I think the board should be clear on what the request is, not to dedicate chairs. That was required by the resolution allowing the dedication of Lake McIntosh shares. Additionally, this agenda item includes what to do about the failure to provide those shares in addition to the request, and the board can consider it as it may appear before it. So
Thank you. The applicant has an opportunity to present their case to the Board of Trustees at this time.
Hey guys, this is Craig. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So it's a very simple request. I think at the outset of this, we were surprised that we would have to increase our tap size to, fit the amount of water that we were using. And then as we moved forward and increased from 3/4 to 1 inch. It wasn't, and it's my fault, of course, but it wasn't immediately clear that we would have to pay for more shares of water to grant to the town. I think what we thought was that, $17,500 in increased tap fee covered that amount of increase. Clearly, we've learned since then, but we also know that the town is sitting on some Macintosh shares. And again, in the interest of economic development for Lions, we're asking for a little bit of help. We also know that as we start to do what do you call it? Sprinkler system, sorry. It's been a long night. We're going to have to increase to a 2-inch tap to support our sprinkler system, and we'll have to add several shares. And that's in our budget. But this original 1.4 water shares was not in our budget. And that's really where we're coming to you. It's a simple request for some economic relief to continue to do business in Lyons.
Are you done?
Yep.
Thank you. Discussion by the Board of Trustees. Mayor Pro Tem.
I had a couple of questions of staff first. The section of the code about when a user of water exceeds the maximum amount allowed under the existing tap size prescribes an additional charge per 1,000 gallons in excess of that limit. Has that charge been computed and assessed for both 2020 and 2021?
It is my understanding, and please, town clerk, join in if you have additional information. It's my understanding that it has not been paid. That according to the agreement that they entered into, they should be billed for that. What triggered us even knowing this was a situation was that at the end, and we have a water year and we have a calendar year, and those are different, and they've been handled differently in the past. But when they went to get a building permit, it triggered any outstanding fees they had with the town, and that's when it became noted that they did have this outstanding balance and went above the amount allowed per their 3/4 inch tap.
Okay. When Spirit Hounds applied for permission to submit like Macintosh shares to CBT shares, the materials for that said that they had exceeded the allowed number of by about 9,000 gallons, so not that much in 2020. And their application said that they anticipated a 30 to 40% increase in usage during 2021. Has the amount of their usage for 2021 been calculated?
Dolores, do you know the answer to that?
I know the mayor asked that of Aaron the other day at town hall, and Aaron stated that he had been doing the math for that, but not been billed to Spirit Hounds yet. But that I think it was a very nominal amount. It wasn't, in the thousands and thousands of dollars, but Aaron would know that. But I know he is working on it.
Are there plans in the works to bill, I guess, for both 2020 and 2021? Is that in the?
We would bill, they would need to pay that before they'd be issued a building permit.
Okay, well, does the staff have any idea when that bill might go out?
Dolores oversees utility billing. Can you know when that would happen?
No, Aaron is out the rest of this week. So I'm not sure where he's at with that, but as soon as he gets back, I'll follow up with that.
Kind of a related question. If somebody just, an individual resident of Lyons or a small business in Lyons doesn't pay their water bill when it's billed to them, how long generally does it, and they don't take any action to request an extension or anything, how long would the normal process take for their water service to be terminated?
I believe it's 60 days. They've got they're late that month and then they've got another 30 days to bring it up. But I can give you a little bit of background on the max exceeds. So let's, Spirit Hounds were to hit that and let's say October. If they hit their 270,000 gallons in October, they're only going to be billed November and December for those 2 months that they went over the 270,000 gallons that's allowed for a 3/4 inch tap. Starting in January, they start fresh. So they're not going to get dinged in January. So if anything, they would owe maybe a month or two for the 2020 calendar year, and the same thing going for 2021. And that amount is only $2.75 per 1,000 gallons that they go over. So like I say, it's a very small amount, and I'm not sure why it hasn't been billed. I don't know that answer, but I will find out. But like I said, it's probably just a month or two of each calendar year, not the entire month.
Okay, but for 2020, the meter reading would have been done, I suppose, in late December, and their total usage for 2020 would have been known by sometime in January of 2021, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then the same for 2021, their total usage for your calendar year 2021 would have been known by January of 2022, correct?
You're correct.
Thank you.
Trustee Wall.
So following up on Mayor Pro Tem's question, my understanding and the specific wording of Administrator Simonson was that they did not pay. And it's a question of, were they billed? And what I'm hearing is that they were not billed. So I don't know how a business is supposed to anticipate or calculate on their own what they should be paying if a bill was not issued. So with no bill being issued, they are not in violation. They are not late. If there is not a bill, there is not an obligation from this business. Is that correct? Have they been billed?
Administrator Simonson, could you?
I've already answered that. I don't know that the billing went out.
So they have not been billed, most likely. And
Not that I know of.
Administrator Simonson, Mayor Pro Tem specifically asked you, had they been billed? And you said they have not paid. You did not answer his question. You came up with a different set of words to indicate that they have not paid, when in fact, they have most likely not been billed. So I don't know how anyone is supposed to anticipate a bill.
Wait a second. You can answer, Administrator Simonson.
I do not know if they've been billed. That is Dolores's department, is utility billing. It is, I don't know, that wasn't part of the memo that Director Kaplan left. I know that he's been working with them. I think they're very much aware that they went over, but it is literally like $27. It's not a significant amount. And I think they were waiting to see what this year did as well. So I'm sorry if I didn't answer his question directly. I don't know if they were billed, and I should have said that.
If they have not been billed from my perspective, then they are not in default.
Okay, but that's not.
Are they current? I think we can look right now. Are they current with all of the bills that they have been issued? We can probably look at that right in the billing system right now to see, are they current?
All right, let's concentrate on the issue before us.
I was going to say, I'm a little confused as to their utility billing and a water share dedication.
That's right. That's why I want to get back on track in regard to what this discussion is truly about. This discussion is a request to waive a water share. Is that not correct? All right. So let's concentrate with either comments or questions in that regard. Are there any? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes. My comments is that would begin with the fact that I don't believe there is any legitimate question or misunderstanding or surprise or lack of clarity about whether Spirit Hounds would have to submit water shares and pay for them. You can start with their own application to use Lake McIntosh shares, which is an application where they said where they asked that the town of Lyons be empowered to accept shares, not donate shares. You can follow that with the words of the resolution itself that said Spirit Hounds shall submit shares. The words shall submit are not subject to ambiguity. And we should always go back and read the actual Lyons Municipal Code, which says water service shall be subject to termination unless additional shares are transferred to the town, not donated by the town, are transferred to the town. And with regard to Trustee Waugh's comments rather than questions, it was known by Spirit Hounds in June of 2021, and probably before then, since they had to put together the application for the permission to use Lake McIntosh shares, that they had exceeded the maximum allowed gallons per year in the year 2020. They knew that sometime early in the year of 2021, more than a year ago. And it does not, the code does not require a notice to the town for them to be required to put up shares. The code says if you go over the maximum allowed gallons, you shall put up additional shares. They got additional time, a grace period, if you want to call it that, because they said, if we look at the code, we'd have to put up a CBT share. That's $70,000. So they came to the board and said, we went over the maximum allowed gallons in the year 2020. We know we did. It was just a small amount. We anticipate going over by another 30 to 40% next year. But instead of having to put up a CBT share, we would like to put up 1.4 Lake McIntosh shares instead. Those at the time and now are somewhere around the $10,000 per share price. So that request was granted for economic development reasons, thereby saving Spirit Hounds $50,000. 70,000 roughly for CBT share, 20,000 roughly for 2 Lake McIntosh shares. But just like the last matter we just heard, here is somebody coming to the town board asking for a favor that's totally within the town's discretion to grant or not grant. Even if something is economic development, the town board is not required to allow Lake McIntosh shares to be used instead of CBT shares, but we did. We commented that we thought it was economic development. But having been granted that discretionary favor, saving them $70,000, $50,000, they didn't do it. They were from Director Kaplan's memo, they were reminded multiple times that they needed to do it. And again, they were required by the code, the resolution, and the words of their own application to put up those shares. Shall submit shares according to the resolution. There was no misunderstanding here. This is simply another example of somebody coming to the town board, requesting a discretionary favor, receiving it, and then failing to live up to the agreement under which the favor was granted. I'm tired of this. If you come to a town board and ask in a public meeting that you be granted a substantial monetary favor under an agreement with the board, that's what you have to do. And you shouldn't be back in front of the board 9 months later asking to renege on the agreement and be gifted shares. And let's be clear who would be gifting those shares. It's common to refer to these as the town shares. Those shares are assets of the Water and Wastewater Fund, a separate utilities fund. That fund is owned collectively by the ratepayers of Lyons, the individual residents and homeowners of Lyons, and the other businesses in Lyons. And if you take 1.4 or 2 Lake McIntosh shares out of the assets of that fund, and you put them up with Longmont for the benefit of a single business, what has happened is the rest of the ratepayers in town are subsidizing that business. That's not fair to the rest of the ratepayers. And that's why all of the sources, the code, the resolution, and their own application required them to submit the shares. They know that. And just like the last applicant here, my preference would be to set a deadline by which they either put up the Lake McIntosh shares that they agreed to put up and that the resolution required them to submit, or the authority to use Lake McIntosh shares instead of CBT shares be revoked, and they can go out and find a CBT share for $70,000. So I think we should discuss what a deadline is, and I'll just pick it from the prior thing. I think we should give them to Memorial Day to put up 1.4 Lake McIntosh shares, or the authority to use those instead of CBT shares should be revoked, and they should be required to put up a CBT share or face the specific remedy set out in that section of the code, which is that their water service may be terminated. That's my comments.
Let me reiterate an additional comment, Mayor Pro Tem. It would not only be unfair to the ratepayers, but it would also be unfair to every single other business in town. This would be an extremely dangerous precedent to start to go down this road. I mean, I don't understand the justification, to be perfectly honest with you. The resolution is plain English. It's written in plain English. It had been reiterated by Director Kaplan several times. So, you know, I have a very difficult time with even imagining where this came from. I really do. Trustee Wong?
I think it came from the board meeting where we decided to use the proceeds from a lawsuit to purchase McIntosh shares and hold them in reserve, where it was discussed at that meeting that we were buying them, and the reason that we were going to allocate those funds to buy water shares was to support economic development. And if we go back and we look at the minutes from that meeting, I think we'll see that that was part of the discussion of why are we getting into the speculation of owning these additional shares when, you know, why would we need to own these additional shares? And there was discussion at that meeting, as far as I can recall, that we were buying them to hold in reserve to be used at the discretion of future boards, this board or future boards, to support economic development. And if I was listening, and I was listening as a business owner and as a trustee, I would take that discussion for its word and its merit. And I think that it's totally reasonable for a business who is anticipating having to purchase additional shares to say, listen, we've done a lot, and we have invested, and we have done things and paid BOD fees and done a lot of other things out of our own pockets to, when the town couldn't tell us how much we were putting out and so forth, we were able to do that. And we're just looking for some additional consideration for how we have worked with the town as a business who brings in a significant amount of people to this town. So if I'm wrong, and I have not looked at the minutes, but that is completely my understanding and recollection of the discussion when we decided to spend that $70,000 to buy 10 water shares. Because my question was, why do we need to have extra water shares in reserve? And I was told that we could use them in negotiation and in consideration for future economic development. So that is where I don't think that this request is ludicrous or out of order. And, you know, great favor. We wrote the code, or the code was written to accept McIntosh shares to allow businesses the economic relief of having to buy CBD shares. And I think it's completely reasonable for this request. And I would like to know, you know, and it's not for this discussion, if not this request, when will we ever relinquish these 10 McIntosh shares that we so needed to have when we purchased them with the proceeds of a lawsuit about water shares?
I'd like to respond to that. There's a difference between economic development and economic gratuity in regard to water shares. The economic development aspect of the Lake McIntosh shares is obviously the difference between what a CBT share cost and what a Lake McIntosh share cost. And so when we purchased Lake McIntosh shares to include into our portfolio, if a business came to town and needed a boost that defined economic development, we ourselves would have the capability to sell one of our Lake McIntosh shares. It never implied gratuity. It never applied, our policy never implied that we were buying those Lake McIntosh shares to give them away for economic development. That was never in the discussion. I don't recollect that concept at all. But for economic development, instead of having to purchase CBT shares, you bet. That's quite a difference. And there are people that came in right before that policy was changed that had to pay $70,000 for a CBT share. So let's just, let's be honest about the record. I never recollected that we ever considered economic development as economic gratuity in regard to water shares. Any further comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
The discussion at the time that we authorized the purchase of Lake McIntosh shares with the lawsuit proceeds did not just center on economic development. Lake McIntosh shares can also be used for affordable housing and commercial development for that matter. The specific discussion at the time that we authorized that purchase was that buying Lake McIntosh shares was a good investment of those funds. We could have put those funds in a very low interest paying bank account or trust deposit, and they wouldn't depreciate. They wouldn't have appreciated very much. We would have earned very low interest return on them. Just as the town has done for years, decades actually, with CBT shares. If we put that money in shares held as an asset of the water fund, it was an excellent investment. No commitment was made at that time to devote them to commercial development, economic development, or affordable housing. If this town is serious about eventually trying to find a way to do more affordable housing, that is one of the best things the town could bring to the finance structure of an affordable housing development, would be its excess water shares. We also have excess CBT shares beyond what, and this is in Director Kaplan's report, beyond the number of developable lots in the old part of town that are that we have, where our policy would require furnishing those for. That's CBT shares over the years have proven to be a pretty darn good investment. They've appreciated faster than just about anything else you could have put the money into. Those could also be available some year for affordable housing or economic development if we decide to do that. There was no decision made by the town board at the time to devote them to a particular purpose, but rather to prudently invest the town's funds in an asset of the water and wastewater fund that would appreciate over time and be subject to further uses in any of those three categories as a future board may determine. So they were not specifically earmarked for economic development.
Further comments? No further comments? Trustee Curtis?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet.
That is my recollection also, as what the Mayor Pro Tem stated, is it was a multitude of things that we could use them for and bank them for at that time. Affordable housing, because we discussed the Eastern Corridor, and affordable housing has been backed by most of these business owners themselves, including you, Mr. Waugh, for employees that right now you're having troubles finding. And the more we have here, the more we can have affordable housing in the Eastern Corridor. On top of the project we have going, Summit Housing will help you and other businesses in town. And towards the statements that this particular business has done a lot, it's paid a lot on their own money. Yes, they have, along with everybody else. And this business has cost the ratepayers a lot of money in everything they've dumped into the wastewater treatment plant before testing ports were put in and limits were put on what you can put down the wastewater system. So how much is it actually cost the town is another thing you got to look at since you brought it up. So that's, got to weigh that too. But I'm in favor of putting a time limit on when that Lake McIntosh share needs to be purchased by Spearhound Distillers and turned over to the town of Lyons. And if that deadline goes by that CBT share be required, so like max share.
Mayor Angela, you're muted.
I know that. Mayor Pro Tem, could you reiterate your initial request along with what Trustee Caravas said? Would you like to put a reasonable time limit on the dedication of a share per the agreement, or a penalty if it's not met?
60 days.
Okay, 60 days. All right. Counselor, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think in order to revoke the use of Macintosh shares, we probably need another resolution revoking that. So I think if the 60 days passes, I would recommend at the following meeting, there'd be a resolution revoking the use of Macintosh shares if that's the board's desire.
Okay. Trustee Lowell, does 60 days to comply with the agreement sit well with you?
Yes, it does.
Trustee Caravas?
Yes.
Trustee Wah?
I would like to know how long it took us to acquire the Macintosh shares when we decided to spend the $70,000. I believe it was longer than 60 days for that transaction to occur. I don't think that 60 days in the current water share market, it will be sufficient in order to find and secure water shares, Macintosh or otherwise.
Trustee Rogan?
I'm a little confused and I have a question for Attorney Dittman. So if we agree 60 days and then we would need a resolution if they don't purchase the shares, but we can't bind the hands of a future board and this board won't be seated in 60 days. So I'm curious about the implications of that.
It's just really direction of staff to bring back a resolution to revoke. The future board could vote it down or up as it pleases. We can't restrict what the future board does.
I got it. Okay. Then I agree.
Trustee Miller?
I'll also agree on this.
I have one question for either counselor and Administrator Simonson. There was a doubt just stated on whether Lake Macintosh shares are even available. Does it preclude the Board of Trustees from selling one of our Lake Macintosh shares to accommodate this need?
I can tell you that we just had a gentleman in at the end of last week who said he had available shares that we could, if they want assistance, we could give them the name of a couple of what's the right word?
Sellers.
Brokers.
Brokers that have it available.
And to address your question, Mayor Angelo, directly, we could not offer town shares until they're declared surplus. So it would take
I got you.
a future resolution, but Trustee Lowell
Okay.
has his hand up.
Trustee Lowell, you had a question?
Yeah, I just went on the site and there's currently 56 Lake Macintosh shares being offered by about 15 different people.
Okay, thank you. I think that, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
In response to Trustee Rogan's question, with regard to the timing of the resolution, I believe that this board could adopt a resolution at its next meeting or the meeting after that to set the 60-day deadline. And then obviously the next board, if it wants to change that and repeal it, they can do that at any time. It's just a resolution. So I think this board can take the action. And if the next board wants to change that, they're certainly free to do so.
Okay, I think the direction, if I understand it correctly, is to bring that resolution forward, Counselor.
Yeah, that's another acceptable way of approaching this. So we could
Okay.
bring something back on the next meeting.
Thank you. Let's see. Here we go. Discussion for future agenda items. Administrator Simonson.
The only items that I have not been made aware of any other than if the board wants to bring forward the item you just discussed, and if you want to bring forward a new social media policy or let the new board do that.
Thank you. Town Clerk Vasquez?
Yep,
Any-
that's all I have. Bring forth the Spirit Hound recommendation resolution and also change the marquee.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I,
Oh, are you referring to summary of action items?
We're not there yet, I don't
We're
think.
not there yet.
sorry.
Okay,
Discussion for future agenda items. I'm sorry, I should have addressed that to the Board of Trustees. I apologize. Are there any future agenda items that any board members would wish to have brought forward? Okay. Now we'll go. Now we've gone through. Counselor, did you have any additional summary of action items?
I do.
I mean, I have some amendments to make to the parking ordinance for one, so.
Okay.
And I need to bring back some language for the Board of Trustees on the procedures ordinance as well.
Okay. Administrator Simonson, you had an additional item?
Also a need to advertise a vacancy on the Human Services. And also talk with Human Services and Aging Commission on how the Summit housing vacancies will be handled.
Okay. Good. Mayor Pro Tem, are you prepared to, with your executive session language?
Yes, but a quick disclaimer, it may take me a little bit longer than usual to get logged on if we go into executive session because I don't have my usual computers and I'm kind of scrambled here. But
Okay.
I move that we adjourn into executive session pursuant to CRS sections 24-6-4024E and 24-6-4024B for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators, and for legal advice from attorneys representing the town regarding a development plan agreement with Moss Rock Development LLC.
Do we have a motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? None? I'll call for the vote.
Mayor Angelo,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Browning,
Aye.
Trustee Lowell,
Aye.
Trustee Caravas,
Aye.
Trustee Waugh,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Yay.
and Trustee Rogan.
Aye.
Okay, see you in a little while.
I just sent the executive session link.
Thank you. Okay, because you gotta help me.